So in terms of what you see for the future for the Endeavour Centre, what are you hoping that this can really grow to? I love the poster that's behind us. I don't know if it's on the camera, but it says, what if buildings could be a major part of the solution to climate change rather than being responsible for 40% of global GHG emissions, right? Yeah. Is that kind of the goal? Do you see a big portion of that?
That's become a huge driver for me personally. I'm actually gone back to school. I'm doing a master's degree right now in the embodied carbon of building materials.
Oh, good. So master's and running this and creating course curriculum.
Yeah. But specifically looking at, flipping the paradigm from buildings being emitters to buildings that actually are storing carbon. So looking at the last project we did last year, it was a small house, 1,000 square foot house, but it actually sequestered 24 tons of CO2 in the building that was in the atmosphere, within the last year. So looking at, suddenly a building is now a carbon capture and storage device rather than causing climate change. It's actually like a drawdown device. And
it's helping.
Yeah, and sort of looking at how that can, how we can sort of promote that as a goal of buildings in general, not just our little niche of them.
Yeah, so are you looking to expand the Endeavour Centre? Do you see?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the interest in what we're doing keeps growing every year. We keep adding more workshops and they keep filling up, and the full-time programs do really well. One thing I would like to do is to start exploring larger projects. I think we've done a really good job of showing that all of this stuff is feasible on a small building scale, but I also feel like that's a small part of the overall market, and so looking at ways to figure out how we can scale up what we're sort of doing, how we build, how it can apply to larger buildings.
Right. And where do you see the future of construction going? Because this is all, so I'm kind of, I have my own opinions as well, right? We all have our own opinions, but I definitely put myself in this position where I can see all the different opinions and I can see where everybody's coming from, right? So you have like the big builders and they need to put up the houses faster for growing families and so forth, right? And they have to build a certain way. And their biggest issue is when there's changes, it's the trades that can't keep up with the work, right? Or good quality trades that can do it. And then we have the custom side. That's kind of where I am in renovations and custom. And there's only so many. There is some trade issue, but we do a lot of work ourselves, so we can learn it. But there is a cost with that, right? So it costs more, and it's a very niche market. And then there's kind of what you're doing on the public side and the education side. But there's only so many people you can train in doing it too, right? So kind of where do you see the future of construction?
I think the two big issues that are really starting to emerge now, and I think will become more important, is the carbon issue. And currently, everybody's attempting to address it by making buildings more energy efficient, but often you can have the reverse effect on the climate. For instance, if you make a passive house type building and you do it all with spray foam, you will actually have a bigger carbon footprint on the planet from making the house than the savings in energy long term. And so I think, realistically looking at, okay, if we're interested in climate change, like making sure that the whole way we look at the building is doing the right thing, not just addressing that sort of one sliver of energy efficiency, especially as, the energy sources we have get cleaner in terms of carbon emissions. The energy efficiency doesn't necessarily matter for global warming. It's
the products that we're using.
Sometimes it's the products we're making, and that the more efficient the building gets, the bigger the slice of the pie those embodied emissions are. And I don't know how seriously our governments are going to take that. There are European countries where you actually have to submit your embodied carbon footprint now as part of your building application, and they're starting to put limits on that. And
if the carbon tax.
That's right. And if that starts to happen seriously, and or a carbon tax, like if in some way builders are starting to pay, or their clients are starting to pay for high emissions, then the kinds of things that we're proposing start to look awfully good.
And that's actually the bottom line. It's the end user, right? What do they have to pay, right? If the builder has to pay more, but all the builders have to pay more, well, they have to charge more.
That's right.
And then so somebody has to pay for it.
And I think in a lot of ways, like one thing that we want to make sure that Endeavour doesn't do is become, like, we're not boutique builders. Like, affordability is at the sort of core of what we do. So I don't want to be proposing things that aren't ever going to be feasible or practical. You know, the things we do may cost more right now because, you know, like with that wallboard back there, we're shipping in from Iowa, but there's no reason that couldn't be made in Toronto and be at every single building supply center, and suddenly it's completely cost competitive. So
I'm sure there's lots of juice boxes in the area.
Exactly, yeah. And so, you know, what we're doing isn't always the most cost-effective thing right now, but all of it, I wouldn't do anything if I didn't see that it could easily be very cost-effective, you know, if more people were doing it. And that's where I see Endeavour is somebody's got to go first. Like, somebody's got to show that this can be done, and then hopefully, you know, things move along from there.
Yeah, I love that you're taking the initiative. Endeavour's taking the initiative to do that. And to a certain extent, we do try things as well, but we're kind of that boutique builder where it's expensive to do custom to begin with, right? Now, on the renovation side, that's different, right? It sometimes makes sense to do the renovation as opposed to build a new home. And then that's where we would be interested in products like this as our company, but we're not necessarily going to go out and make those products. Our share is doing this, right? How do we get people to know about it and ask for it and
what's
want
really
it?
Interesting, because as part of the thesis work I'm doing, I'm basically making models of all kinds of different building, like ways you can build the same building, and you can make a carbon sequestering building that any builder could build right now with materials that they can go order off the shelf right now. So, you know, something like a simple switch from fiberglass or rock wool, or especially foam insulations, to dense packed cellulose. Like, that's a carbon sequestering material from the waste stream. Wood fiber board sheathing on the exterior of the building instead of foam, locally made, available all over the place, nail it on like any other, you know. So there are really simple things that a builder could do tomorrow if this was driving them, and then there are the things that we're doing that are further along, like you can't go order your hempcrete from the store. So I get that that's sort of boutique and different, but I think just being aware, if you know that's one of your goals, that there are ways to do it right now and affordably. Do
you have a list of like some of those easy steps?
That's what I'm working towards. Is sort of like
I'd love to see that list.
Yeah, the easy, you know, if you're a builder, here are like the 5 easiest things you can do to kind of like drop the carbon footprint of your building.
So blog post to come that we can share.
Yeah. And then I also think that the toxicity of building materials is something that's going to become more and more relevant. I think all around people are starting to realize, whether it's pesticides in food or air pollution, but that right now there's absolutely zero regulation in our building codes. Like, you don't have to prove the safety of any product that goes in a home, which when I tell people in our workshops that, they're shocked. Like, they always think, oh, there must be some government rules or something like that. But really, if it's not lead and it's not asbestos, you can put it in your house, and somebody can sell it to you to put in your house. And I think, you know, for all the projects we do with our students, a sort of like zero toxicity rule applies, and I think that will start to become more and more relevant.
I think that's important to point out, especially because the building code, at least here in Ontario, is putting more emphasis on airtightness as well.
That's right, yeah.
Luckily, they're starting to put ERVs and HRVs in, that's mandatory now as well, but still, that's not necessarily getting rid of all that off-gassing.
That's right, yeah. I mean, it's helping clear it out, but if it's continually off-gassing, then you know, those systems are there just to stop you from getting sick, which is not really the kind of building environment that I want to be making for people.
And for the most part, it's also important to remind ourselves that most of our time is spent indoors, whether it's in our house or in our building. You know, luckily you're working outside a lot of the time, right? But unless you're in construction working outside or doing some sort of work that involves you to be outside, you're going from your house, especially in the winter, you go from your house to your car to your building, right? And you spend like you know, a couple hours outside during the week, unless you know, maybe you go skiing or snowboarding or something on the weekends, right?
And it's, you know, you start to look around. One of the things I show our students is the simple, like the MSDS sheet for drywall mud, which seems like a pretty benign product, and then you read the labels for most of them, and most of them have like 2 to 4 either cancer-causing or endocrine-disrupting chemicals in them, that then somebody comes into your house, or you sand it into really fine particulate that's in the building for a really long time. And
that's wild. I have to admit, I've never actually looked at it.
Exactly. And the more you do that, the more you sort of scratch the surface of like, oh, what is that and what's in it? It's quite shocking that there's no regulation about anything that's carcinogenic, or there's no. Unlike with food, you don't have to put warning labels. There's no, there's absolutely no regulation. So I think that's...
well, hopefully that changes soon.
Hi, this is Brian from The Conscious Builder. You are watching part 2 of our tour with Chris Magwood at the Endeavour Centre in Peterborough, Ontario. Next week, we're going to be posting part 4 of our Wood Source series with Tim Priddle and Casey. And we are also sharing a lot of content on our Wellington West net zero build. We have just finished excavation and we are going to be preparing the footings. So we're going to be sharing a lot of content on that. Make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.